Perfect.
All right, so Wendy's going to move on to show you. We've tried to be as helpful as we possibly can in providing you resources. Now, if your email box is like my email box, you're inundated with daily emails about webinars you can attend, sessions you can attend, resources. So what we've tried to do is curate a list, and what's highlighted are what I refer to as the more boots on the ground go-to for classroom application examples. The others provide some really nice foundational information, but the highlighted ones are really the take into your classroom and try these kind of things. So with that, let's hop into this. So on Monday, I received, and I'm sure several of you did as well, an email from Michael Benedict, like he does at the start of every semester, sharing with us some resources to help keep us going through the semester. Hey, remember to post your CV and your syllabi and howdy and whatnot. So we tried to curate those 3 resources that he shared here, one being the TAMU COVID website, one being Academic Innovations Keep Teaching website, and then the one there in the front is actually Texas A&M's Fall 2020 information. And that's what we went through and really pulled through to share what we're sharing in this PowerPoint. So I'm not saying we've exhausted all the information in that website. We would recommend you go check that out when you have more time. So based on that, Texas A&M this fall is offering 3 types of courses. Face-to-face courses, which we know are asked to be streamed remotely via Zoom into the classroom, or from the classroom for those students who cannot attend remotely. And that's what we're referring to as the blended synchronous. So blended meaning you will have some students in person face-to-face as well as joining via Zoom. And synchronous meaning that it does happen at the posted class time via howdying. So that's really what we're going to take a look at today. But there are 2 other formats. One is remote only, where it's still that synchronous, but there's no face-to-face piece. And then completely online, which is mostly asynchronous. So Wendy, if you'll advance to the next one, what we're going to look at today is that number 1, and the institution has laid out 3 different pieces that have to be included in those blended synchronous sessions. Number 1 is any real-time assessment or activity that you're doing for credit that students will be graded on has to have a remote option. So some people are choosing just to put everything in the LMS so that students access all of anything that's needing to be graded in a remote option for everybody and not worrying about passing papers in or out during class. The second requirement is that each student is provided a chance, but is not required to attend in person once a week. And so each one of your students, whether your classroom holds them all or you have to platoon them, and we'll talk more about that, have an opportunity to come to class once a week. Now they're not required to, but they have to be provided the opportunity. And then the third piece is that during class, the minimum standard of interaction for students attending remotely is that there's a way for them to ask questions. And so that's another piece about this that we'll talk about. So at this point, I'm going to stop and let Regina take over and share with you a little bit about the technology in the classroom.
Well, howdy everyone. And so it has been a busy summer for IMS, Instructional Media Services. So we're active on a provost mandate. We ordered quite a bit of cameras, and my crews, along with normal installs, new building, all kind of maintenance projects. We hired out a contractor, and we have put cameras in quite a few centrally managed classrooms across campus. And so right now we're still working on getting those cameras installed. I want to say 83% have been tested. They're working fine. We have 17% that we're still trying to get into. A lot of the classrooms are closed off due to construction. And so what we did was we ordered a large number of cameras, and we also ordered wireless lapel microphones. So we were asked to target the registrar managed classrooms along with our classrooms, any IMS classroom that we formerly already managed. And so not only are they installed and they've been testing, we've also working with the PITO project management team. And so what that means is that a group of faculty were selected, and we have how-to guides, and they had to follow those guides and use the technology, okay? And so they had to open up Zoom, go in and open up eCampus, and go in and open up Canvas. A lot of people are involved in this project. Jason Munchow from Department of Student Affairs is working with us. He's been phenomenal. So there are also a lot of learning spaces, you know, all over the place, 32 learning spaces. So Jason and his team have been just awesome and getting stuff installed. We're working with them, getting them equipment. We're working with athletics. They have been phenomenal. And so all these spaces should be published soon on the Keep Teaching website. It's not there yet, but there's gonna be another field called Classroom Technology. And so on this website, you'll also find the how-to guides. So the PITO management team also took faculty into these classrooms, into these learning spaces, and they're still doing it. And basically the faculty were given a guide to make sure that they can get the equipment going. So with the learning spaces, we managed to work with networking and other companies. Some places had to have more Wi-Fi. We provide them with cameras. If you've been in an IMS classroom, they're going to have a PITO OL computer desktop. Some of the spaces we provide them with laptops. And so we had to have some sound systems updated. So it's been a crazy summer. And then the PITO management team, you know, we're still testing everything too, to make sure that you guys will be able to log on and get the equipment going. So same thing with the classrooms, as also with the learning spaces. They're coming in and they're testing with Zoom and eCampus and Canvas. So we're making it happen. Crazy world, but we're making it happen.
All right, Regina, thank you. I know there are several questions that have been posted for you in chat, and Regina is going to hang around and field those questions. So if you have specific questions for Regina, she will be here to help monitor chat with us. And so please know that they are working tirelessly with the faculty group to make sure this happens. Wendy actually gets to help do some of that testing later this week as well. So with that, what we wanted to get into is some of you are going to hear the word HyFlex this semester. And we wanted to define HyFlex for you so you knew what it meant. What HyFlex is, it was coined in 2006 by Brian Beatty at the San Francisco State University. And HyFlex is actually a combination of the word hybrid and flexibility. And it refers to course design that provides a hybrid format for face-to-face and online students that really truly adds a flexibility piece to it. Now, if you can see down there in HyFlex, there are actually 3 ways that students can attend class. In person, remotely, so there's your blended synchronous, but what makes HyFlex a little bit different than the blended synchronous is that students in HyFlex can also interact completely asynchronously with the course content. And so we wanted to ease your mind and know that we are not teaching in a HyFlex situation this fall, but a blended synchronous to where you will have in-person students as well as those attending remotely. Now, some of you will choose to offline some of your content asynchronously, and that is completely up to you and how you choose to design your course. But know that fall face-to-face is still just the in-person or streamed remotely. So with that, let's take a look at where some of you might be feeling. There's a Twitter thread that I wanted to share, and Rob Elliott is an instructor, and he very emphatically, in response to all of this, said, I cannot teach a course with half of the students in a socially distant classroom and half in a Zoom room simultaneously. And I know some of you are feeling that same thing right now. And so Derek Bruff replied to him, and Derek Bruff is actually a well-known academic developer. He's the director of the Center for Teaching at Vanderbilt and is very prolific in his writing. And he actually got on the Twitter feed and said, for what it's worth, I think there are some strategies for working with this challenging situation. And that's what we're here to say to you as well. For what it's worth, we're here to support you through this and provide you some ideas to help make this as seamlessly possible so you can continue providing that transformational experience for your students. And so with that, we wanted to share a couple of ideas on some upsides. Now, you just heard Regina share, we are getting our classrooms equipped and ready to handle this. So that is well taken care of. This type of teaching also really increases the opportunity for student engagement. It may seem counterintuitive, but it really provides students with different avenues for you to bring the classroom to them, depending on how they can or are able to connect with you in class. And when you have an opportunity, there's a link there to a very short and sweet tips page that we put together here at the center to help you start building that classroom community within a blended synchronous model. What do you do when students are in Zoom and some are in class? And so I know Wendy will share some ideas, but also that tips page is there to help share a little bit more when you have the time to look through that. And thirdly, it really clears up some time for you to think strategically about your course. So if you were to stop right now and reflect, what are the big takeaways you want students to leave your course with? The content, knowledge, and skills that they need either for the next prerequisite or that they need to be a good disciplinarian within your field. Or if you teach a core course, what are those takeaways you want all your students to leave with? And what you can do is shift your priority to that class time to really bring home those concepts for your students in more application type activities, so that they're really getting that hands-on experience with what you think is the most salient content within your course. And you can offload some of that important, but not as important content more in the asynchronous arena. So some faculty are like, well, how do I think about this? And what helps some of them is to think of this truly as an online course with a live lecture component versus just thinking about it, it's a face-to-face course with online stuff. So if you can think about it as you're truly planning an online course with the added bonus of you're going to get to see your students at least once a week. And so with that, that can maybe help organize what you could put online and what you could then do with your face-to-face time. You've done this before, that is great news. When you set up your original course design, you have done this before. So again, think about those course learning outcomes and what can you do to tweak or design your assessments and learning activities with this then blended audience. And again, that's what Wendy's going to really hit home for us. As academic innovation was bringing to close the spring semester, they polled students on how it went. And when you have a second, I encourage you to click on this 12 things we heard from students about the spring 2020 semester, because it really gives a 12 things that are very take home for you. It gives the student comment, and then it gives you a tip on how to incorporate that into your class, with the last one being a thanks. The students are extremely appreciative of all the effort you're putting forth to help make this kind of learning environment possible. And so on the next slide, a couple of things to start thinking about. Some of you are in a classroom that is large enough to handle all of your students socially distant. Some of you, though, are assigned to a classroom where you have to do what the provost referred to as platooning and dividing your students up. And it's our understanding that if you're in a classroom that needs this platooning, you will have been contacted already, because there is not a way in the system for those students to be manually divided up. So if it is a case where you have to platoon your students, say a third come on Wednesday, a third come on Monday, a third come on Wednesday, and a third come on Friday, it's completely up to you how you want to divide up those students. If you're Tuesday, Thursday, maybe half come on Tuesday and half come on Thursday. But again, some of you are in classrooms large enough, and that's why we're teaching in so many of those non-traditional spaces, like Regina was talking about, from the Hall of Champions to Kyle or to Reed Arena, all kinds of different spaces to help accommodate, so you could potentially have all of your students there. But unfortunately, we didn't have enough spaces for that, so some people are having to platoon. Another thing to consider before class gets started, as you're putting your syllabus together, you might think about how you want to handle your in-class communication and video policy. Some people ask the provost, can we ask students to turn their cameras on in Zoom? And the answer to that is yes. Based on the new bring your own device policy, students are supposed to have a device with a webcam. So these types of things that you're thinking about implementing in class, it helps to really state those in your syllabus and talk about them with your students so they know your expectations going forward. And the third thing to think about including in your syllabus is a brief description about this type of teaching environment. That some of you will be here face-to-face, some of you will be here remotely, and so there's a sample blurb on the slide that you could potentially use and edit to make yours and put in your syllabus. But having a conversation with the students about what this type teaching environment means and how that will impact what you all do in class. So record or not to record, it's completely up to you. There is not an expectation that you record. I know Michael Stevens spoke and said there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that the students really appreciate you recording your lectures and posting them, but there is not an institutional mandate that you do that. I know some of you identify with this gray box where it's hard enough to get your students to talk about controversial issues in the classroom. Knowing they're being recorded and this will be posted may stifle some of that discussion. And so you may choose to not record. This bottom orange box, I don't plan to read the whole thing to you, but it's a study that Nate found for us. And they did a pre-post with students in this type of learning environment. And when the students started this semester, they preferred one-on-one interaction with their TAs and professors, and largely did not prefer to learn via recorded lecture. But when polled again 10 weeks later and asked again, one-on-one interaction was almost at the bottom of the list, and the online video had nearly doubled. And so that just really speaks to the fact of, like, I know when I'm trying to learn something and I'm viewing YouTube, the beauty of it is I can rewind and watch again and slow down and rewind and watch again. And some of them choose to do the same with your content. And so one more piece for you to consider as you're thinking about recording or not to record. There was another study done, and again, I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but I took the snippet in case you want to read it later, that this was an engineering professor who was recording, and then he noticed that his students' attendance and grades were going down. So the next semester, he chose to not record, and it made some difference. But what he ultimately decided to do was to go ahead and record, but put a time limit on when those videos are up there. So he chose to have the videos only available for 24 to 48 hours after class. So there's actually a third option: record and post, keeping them open forever, limit the time they're open, or not record. And so that's really just some options for you to consider as you think about record or not recording your class. But I want to bring your attention back to how you felt when I told you we were recording and sharing this with you. For some students, that just lessens the cognitive load, knowing they're going to have this to reference when they're done. I think we're about ready to turn it over to Wendy, who's going to take you through some actual classroom applications of how to make this happen.
Yes, thank you, Sam. So as Sam said, my name is Wendy Zimmer. I teach writing and communication skills in the sport management division. So largely, I teach my students how to enhance their writing and communication through writing intensive courses, just to give you some background for the context I'm about to share. And just kind of to refocus where we are, the aspects I'm going to refer to are these face-to-face aspects. So what are you going to do in your classroom when some of your students are with you face-to-face and some are via Zoom? So my plan for the rest of, for the next like 15 minutes is to give you 3 examples that are all methods that I've used either in face-to-face courses I've taught or in online courses I've taught, modified for this new blended learning environment that we see ourselves teaching in the fall. And so I will talk about those applications, and I will hit at the end a little bit of what you do for questions, because these are things that the provost has asked us to address. And so we want to provide as many resources today as we can to help you as you're planning your courses, as you're tweaking your courses for the fall. So just to kind of piggyback on what Regina said, there is a lot of technology available to us as A&M faculty. And you may have different levels of comfort with technology, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but just keep in mind that as we talk about technology today, technology is not the end all be all. There has to be technology in a blended learning environment, but what you use is up to you. And so A&M supports Zoom, obviously, because we're here, iClickers, Google Suite in all its various forms, and then Microsoft Teams. The other pieces that I'll be talking to you about today, or that are mentioned in the resource slide that Sam already showed you, are not necessarily supported. And what that means is they don't integrate with the LMS, but that doesn't mean they can't be effective for your students. So a great place to start is this 2000 model by Smith. And you may have seen this before. I always try to use this model when I'm starting to design my courses, when I'm really thinking about what is my layout going to be? Because I want you thinking about this fall. It is utmost important that we optimize class time. As Sam mentioned, you know, our students can watch YouTube videos. They can go and Google search. But we have an opportunity, instead of just teaching online, which in some ways would be much easier, instead of just teaching online, we get to actually see our students face to face. And that is a great opportunity. So we have to optimize that. Our students are coming to see us. Our students are coming to see you. You're the expert in your field. There's a reason that these students come to Texas A&M. And so they can go on YouTube and they can search all kinds of different videos to watch. But they have an opportunity to learn from you. So instead of lecturing, really think about how can you structure your course in a way that integrates active learning, that integrates activities, even when your students are in two different environments. Okay? So this is where I start. I start by thinking about my time. This model is basically for a 50-minute class. If you have a longer class period, obviously it would need to be adjusted. But thinking about students and really blending the amount of lecture you give, there's nothing wrong with doing lecture. But within that lecture, integrating activities to really enhance your students' learning and enhance their retention. Because research shows us that's where knowledge retention comes from, is the application of the learning that is occurring in class. And this also helps, like thinking about places to start. I also start with a backwards design approach. If you're familiar with McTighe and Wiggins, even if you aren't, backward design starts with your learning objectives. Really think about, okay, I'm the expert. I know what my students need to know. What do they really need to know? And then after you figure out your learning objectives, then work your way backward and go, okay, how can I assess those learning objectives to make sure my students understand the information I want them to? But then in turn, what activities will help increase their knowledge? So don't start with assessments, don't start with activities, start with what do you want your students to know and go from there. And then the second piece before I dig into examples is this is a great time for you to stop and assess your comfort with technology or trying new technology. Some people might be like, absolutely, I'm on board. And other people are like, I'm trying to learn a new LMS. I'm maxed out. And that's okay. That's completely okay. So just thinking about where you are and your comfort level with technology, because if you're more comfortable, then your students are going to be more comfortable. So keep that in mind as we have conversations today. So my first example, looking at this learning objective, one learning objective for my writing intensive course is for my students to be able to differentiate strong aspects of written work. Okay, specifically, I want them to understand what makes a good introductory paragraph, what makes a good body paragraph, what makes a good conclusion paragraph. And so for all of the examples I'm going to walk you through today, I have this similar kind of table where I split things as I'm processing my courses. I split it into three options. So asynchronous, what can I have my students do? You know, what's that online piece that they don't need me for? They don't need my expertise. They don't need my knowledge base. They can go do those aspects without me and without my help and without my support. And then within that, then once they get in class, what are the aspects that the face-to-face students are going to do? What are the aspects that the synchronous students are going to do? Oftentimes it's similar, but you'll see how they're split up as we walk through. So for this learning objective, I would say I start with introductory paragraphs. So before class, regardless of how you're coming to class, all of my students are going to be required to look at examples of strong introductory paragraphs. Okay, my students keep a digital journal, partially because it's a writing class and I teach them writing to learn and the value of reflection, but also If I'm requiring them to do all of these things outside of class, I wish they would do everything just for their own learning and their own internal motivation to do it, but not all students are motivated in that way. So by having a required journal, they're more likely to do these asynchronous aspects of my course and then also reflect on them. So their learning is enhanced and retained larger than it would be otherwise. So all of my students look at examples of strong paragraphs. They all review the rubric that I use to assess all of my course. And then when they come to class, then everybody, regardless of if you're face-to-face or on Zoom, are going to be walked through, I'm going to walk them through an example of evaluating a paragraph. So I'm going to pull up a paragraph, one of the ones they probably looked at as an example, and I'm going to use the right rubric to walk them through how to evaluate that paragraph. Okay? And then through that, I can still do the things that I always do in my class. I can have discussions with my students. I can go, okay, show of hands, who thinks this paragraph has a really strong thesis? Raise your hand. People on Zoom, they can raise hands on Zoom just the same as they can face-to-face. They can also do the little hand raising aspect, okay? Or I can call people by name the same way that I always have. My courses this semester vary in size. Some of them are smaller, some have up to 60 students. I understand if your course has like 200, it's a little bit different, but thinking about, I can still call on students, or I can say, okay, I need someone that's joining me by Zoom to give me your opinion. And I tell my students all the time, please unmute. Please, they have to have their video on for me, but please unmute. I want to hear you. I want to hear your voices. And they don't. And I understand. But nonetheless, you can still have those interactions that you've always had. Or another option is I can do a poll everywhere, or I can do a Kahoot. As I'm walking through these, a Kahoot would be at the end for review, but I can do a poll everywhere and go, okay, pull up your phones. How many of you think this introduction does a good job of engaging your audience? And they can do a poll and we can talk about it. Okay, so regardless of how they join, they're all doing that activity. And then at the kind of application piece, or if you're thinking about that engagement piece, then after I walk through the example with them, then I either divide them into groups. And so my students on Zoom will be put in breakout groups. My students in class will be put in socially distanced groups. And then they will evaluate a paragraph together because I just walked them through how to do it. Now they can do it on their own. I will say this is a good point for me to kind of stop and talk about. It depends on my students also. So it's important, even in this environment, which is a little bit unique as to what we're used to, it's important to still get to know our students. So if this is an activity and I'm 3 weeks into class and I've done a whole lot of group activities and I can tell my students are kind of losing a little bit of the novelty of that, maybe then instead I have them each evaluate a paragraph individually and then we talk about it. Or I have them each evaluate one individually and then put them into groups. So I can vary these activities and I can vary these approaches based upon what my students need and how I'm reading them. Because even in this environment, in our blended learning environments, it's still important that we build relationships. I do a lot with my students to build relationships. Even if it's just, I have them do Flipgrid videos. If you're not familiar with Flipgrid, it's a very easy, free, quick video upload website where they can introduce themselves and then they can provide feedback and talk to each other. And Sam mentioned earlier that the center's put together a building classroom community piece. It's so important that we still get to know our students and we still use that emotional intelligence, which is what we do every day that we teach. It's just now it will look a little different. I will also say before I move off, because I'm kind of on this tangent, please still be yourself as you're teaching. Okay? Part of the reason I love teaching is I can interact with students and I tell goofy jokes and they laugh at me probably out of sympathy. And there's so many things that I come out, my personality comes out, my personality shines. So does yours. So don't lose that through this. Still be you. Still tell jokes. Still be silly. You might be behind a plexiglass screen. You have a mask on your face. Smile with your eyes. Still be yourself. Because if you lose the joy in teaching, your students will see that and they will lose potentially some of the joy in learning. So be passionate. Okay, tangent over. So this is the right rubric, I often put this in a Google Doc, and so my students, I share out a link, and my students can go in either if they're in breakout groups or if they're socially distanced in my classroom, and they can complete this rubric together based upon what we just did. So this is what I just walked them through, and then they do it together. And then they can either submit it to me, they can submit it to maybe a discussion forum on whatever LMS you're choosing to use this semester. There are options. The second example, so the second learning objective is to develop skills and materials appropriate for job preparation. Part of my course is also job prep. It's writing, so I'm teaching them how to write cover letters and elevator speeches and resumes. So for elevator speeches, this is often kind of the end of one day and then moving into the second day. So the end of the first day, I walk all of my students through an activity that's, developing an elevator speech in 15 minutes. Okay, so we do that the last 15 minutes of class one day. Then I send them off and they all record their elevator speeches that they created in class in Flipgrid. Okay, and then the next class period, they come back all together. I do a lecture on essentially elevator speeches. How do you develop a good first impression? What makes you unique? What makes you stand out? The sport industry is unbelievably competitive. So I tell my students, if you walk up and say, I love sport, someone's going to go, I don't care. Because if you don't, why are you here? And so they have to learn ways to sell themselves. What are employers looking for? And so after I walk them through a facilitated discussion on that, then I put them in groups. In this situation, one thing I'm going to try this semester I've never tried, I may only do it once, we'll see, is all of my students, I'm requiring them to bring laptops to class. I'm going to suggest they bring headphones of some sort. It's earbuds, whatever it is. And I'm going to have them all get on Zoom. And that way, they're not just paired with the students that are in the platform with them. They are more blended. And so then students will, I'll put them in groups that are, you can either determine ahead of time or you can have Zoom do that for you. And then they will, in that group, watch the Flipgrid video of all the students in their group. So either one student can share and play all of them, or they can individually watch student A, come back, provide feedback to that student, go watch student B, come back, provide feedback to that student. Like I said, if your class is large, you're not going to have 300 students talking in a shared breakout rooms. It could be chaos. So this depends on the size of your class. It could also be done individually through a Google form, which wouldn't necessarily need to be face-to-face or done in class. That could be an asynchronous aspect. But in this way, the students again are interacting and they're providing feedback based upon the lecture that I just gave. So it's retaining that information and applying what I learned in a real life situation. And then the third example is, so the learning objective is to discover and apply effective ways to conduct and disseminate research. My students' final project is a manuscript. So if I don't teach them how to write a research paper, then we're missing a major component of my course. So again, looking at this model, before class starts, regardless of how you participate in class, they watch a video discussing possible research topics, because I want them to come to class with some topics in their mind already. Okay, and then when they come to class, they bring 2 to 3 possible topics that they already put in their journal, so they have them ready to go. And then when they get to class, regardless of how you're joining class, I walk them through an activity of how do you pick a research topic, and then how do you turn that research topic into a research question or research questions. For those of you that do research, you know that can be difficult. And for students who have never done it before, sometimes their topics are way too broad and outside the scope of they could possibly obtain in a semester course. Sometimes they're way too narrow. Sometimes they're not dealing with an issue in sport, which is one of the requirements. Any of those pieces, okay? And then after I walk them through that, all of my students have to put their research topic and questions into something. And there's multiple ways to do this. So they can put it into a Google Doc, which I'm going to show you an example in a minute. They can instead either give feedback in that Google Doc, or they can just upload it or put it in the Google Doc, and then the students can complete a Google form, which I'll show you an example in a minute, or they can provide feedback through Peerceptive. Peerceptive speaks with our LMS, it integrates with our LMS very easily. You may have used peer review software before. Peer review software does not just have to be for full-on manuscripts. So if you really need to have your students provide feedback on anything, Perceptive is great. Okay, and then outside of class, the students provide feedback. They don't need to be in class to do that. They don't need me to do that. And then the students make changes to their research questions and submit them. So just kind of a few examples. This is one way a Google Doc could look. They could go ahead, this would be a smaller class. I often give my students the option to create a pseudonym if you don't want to use your real name, depending upon with Google Docs and Google Forms, you often have to give the information out to everybody. So that can be an issue, so they can use a pseudonym. They enter whatever name they want to use, they just have to remember it. And then they put their research topic, they put their research questions. And then, so I'm the reviewer, I go in and I give them feedback on whatever the aspects that I have set out, okay? Or here's an example of a Google form. And so you have the Google form and you have, I put my name, I put the name of the person I review, I give them, I score them, and then I give them feedback. The only thing about a Google form is then I have to either share the Excel spreadsheet that comes out of that with everybody, or I can go through and sort it and share it out per student. But if you have a larger class, that's more difficult. And then Perceptive, like I said, Perceptive does it all for you. So if you have a larger class, Perceptive is the way to go. If you're not familiar with Perceptive, reach out to AI. They taught me how to do it the first time, and it's very, very helpful. So I'm running out of time, so just kind of a few things. This is part of my calendar, and I'm going to use, like I mentioned, kind of the flipped classroom design a ton this semester. So I've designed my course calendar to have a Monday prep and then a Monday. My class is Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so for each class, I have a prep section so that students can do all of these pieces they don't need me for before they come to class. And then when we come to class, we can talk about and discuss and apply all that information that they already looked at before me. So that's one thing to consider, and I've done this in the past and it's worked really well because the students find it very easy to follow. Other things, I talked about Flipgrid for other resources. Answer Garden is a great resource if you just want to throw up a question. It's free. You just send out a link and the students can fill in answers. It's anonymous so that they can see. It can be review, it can be pre-assessment, it can be anything you want to just kind of enhance the novelty for your students. And then Nearpod is way outside the scope of today's presentation, but it has a lot of options. So just kind of a couple of final things as we're wrapping up. I've already talked about some of these and you can read them on your own. But part of the things I want to talk about is be intentional in what you're doing, okay? It's very easy to have your students all of a sudden they're completing all these Google Docs and completing all these Google Forms and doing all of this stuff and your grading load now just exploded. So something that I would have just observed in my class, now all of a sudden I have a grade. So be mindful of that. I always have a participation grade in my course and I tell my students up front, like this is what this entails. And if you do that, then your students are more likely to not be constantly looking for where's my, how exactly did I get 9.5 of those 10 points on that thing that we did? It's a lot more flexibility and it's more of less counting points and worrying about grading every little thing. So be mindful of your load and what you can handle with everything else, okay? Other things, start small, give yourself grace. No one expects this semester to be perfect. We are all giving it everything that we have. So really think about what's one thing I can change? What's one thing I can do? What's one thing that I heard today that I could implement relatively simply in my class, okay? And then kind of last 2 points, always explain the purpose to your students. The students know this is new. They know this is a different semester. So tell them, say we're trying something new. I want to implement Flipgrid in the class. This is what Flipgrid does. This is why we're doing it, okay? And the more you explain the purpose to them, the more likely they're gonna have an open mind and try it with you. So explain purpose is important. And then the last bullet point is, and I really can't hit this enough, ask yourself, what do you wanna do? And then figure out the technology. Then figure out the method for doing it, okay? There's a way to do almost anything. Almost anything. And part of it may be reaching out to consultants at CTE, sending us emails. Hey, I have this idea. Do you have any ways you think I could do this in a blended learning environment? But don't limit yourself. Ask yourself, what do you really want to do? And then figure it out from there. The biggest piece before we put you out in breakout sessions is managing student questions, because the provost has asked us to make sure we have an environment where students can ask questions. I've struggled with this just because, like I said, my students leave their computers on mute and they don't talk very often, but I've started implementing either the first and or the last 5 minutes of class, leave it open for questions. You can have some sort of parking lot. Google Chat works, or excuse me, Zoom chat works great, because a lot of students will ask things in chat that they wouldn't actually do otherwise. They will contribute in class through chat where they wouldn't otherwise. You can have a running Google Doc. We actually have a running Google Doc going behind this presentation right now, just to kind of keep us all on the same page. But my students might, like with the research question, I'm used to giving them feedback on the spot. Well, they may not want me 6 feet from them. So they could type in their research question. I could give them feedback within class as they're working. And then rotating through groups is always important, whether they're in Zoom or face-to-face, and then pausing for 2 to 3 minutes, which I have not done today because we're short on time, and I apologize for that. But pausing after each activity and allowing them time to ask questions.
Hey, Wendy, before we leave this point, I've seen several people ask, how do you manage student questions in chat? And one of the things we're finding more and more in the literature is to recruit students to be what they call the voice of chat. And so whereas you may not be able to monitor chat during the whole session, and some of you have large classes and a TA who can't be in there to monitor the chat, we'll rotate that job for the students. It can be an in-person student monitoring chat for you. It could be a Zoom person monitoring chat for you. And so empowering the students to monitor chat, and you stopping every now and then to check with that student, or they can alert you when there's something. Use your students to help you with that. And so that is more and more what we're finding throughout as this keeps going, that people are using the students to help them monitor the chat, as well as be able to answer some questions and whatnot, and rotate that job throughout. So just thought I'd throw that in.
No, I think that's great. I've also told my students when I taught in a blended type environment this summer, it was not really, anyway, was if I don't get to something when class is over, I will check the chat. And then if it's something that I need to address to everyone, I'll make an announcement or something through LMS. If not, I'll individually contact that student. So that's an option as well. So we're going to give you a little time. We may actually be at 8 minutes now, not 10 minutes. We'll see how it goes. We're going to split you into breakout groups because we want to give you a little time to reflect on everything we've talked about today, the foundational pieces, the application pieces, and really think about, what does this mean for your course moving forward? Okay, so we ask that when you get in your groups, before you discuss the prompts, give just a real quick, hi, I'm Wendy Zimmer. I teach communication in the health and kinesiology department. Or just introduce yourself briefly. And then a couple of things that we thought you might want to discuss, and your group might go off on a tangent, and that's okay, is what is one thing you are thinking about trying in your fall blended synchronous course, even based on today or something else that you had learned? And or what question or clarification point do you have that you want to talk out with your group? You're like, okay, I really like this, but I don't know how I could do this in my environment or with my students, because it's important we stay student-centered through all of this. And I put a note in here, we put a note to ourselves, but it's also for you to know, if you're recording your Zoom sessions, when your students go in breakout rooms, it does not record the breakout rooms. It records just kind of you sitting there. Or if you pop into breakout rooms, which is great, by the way, and you should do because it keeps your students engaged because they never know when you're going to pop in, it just kind of records a black screen. So it's a good idea to pause recordings when you put your students in breakout rooms. So on that note, you will have, how are we going to get them, Sam? 8 minutes? What did you end up putting?
Done at 6, so we can bring everybody back together.
Okay. So you'll have 6 minutes. It'll send you out. After the 6 minutes, it'll bring you back. So you don't need to do anything. When it gives you the option, go into breakout room, accept it, and then you will go out and we'll see you back in 6 minutes.
All right, well, welcome back. I know there's lots of unanswered questions that you still have, and so we're gonna try and see if we can't get some of those answered based on looking through chat while you were in your breakout groups. We worked at the center to put together a document on tips to build and promote classroom community, and some of them touch on some of the questions you've had. One of them being similar to what Wendy said, is find a way for students to be able to introduce themselves, and there's lots of different ways to do that. Another one is to elect someone to monitor the session's back channel and serve as the voice of chat. So that's in there as well. But this is a big one. Decide whether or not to have everybody in your class session log into Zoom, regardless of if they're in person or remote. And I know that came up, and I know people were asking, can we require headphones? Can we not require headphones? What if I have 300 people in my class? I know one of the things that we can do, as Nate was sharing earlier, is with everybody logged into Zoom, the nice thing is that everybody can see the chat. Everybody can see the chat questions. They can see the chat responses going on. The downsides to that is some of them may have some echoing, so they need to mute their microphone. If you've got 300, it takes a bunch of bandwidth. The other nice thing about having everybody in Zoom is regardless of whether they're in person or face-to-face, they can join, or excuse me, face-to-face or in Zoom, they can join into breakout groups, which then though you would need the headphones for. So that is something to consider. I know some people have made the decision that if it's going to be a discussion or a very interactive course, to potentially think about doing that session completely online so that everybody is in Zoom and there's not really that face-to-face piece that day. And so there's some different options to play with depending on your class size. I know another thing Wendy spoke on is to work to ensure that people attending remotely have as equitable of an experience as people in class. And so things like, if somebody asks a question, whether it's in Zoom or whether it's face-to-face, to repeat that question so that everybody can hear. And just simple things that we take for granted in that face-to-face session, we're gonna have to stop and rethink up front or along the way to help make this work moving forward. There's lots of different tools that groups can be using that allow them to work synchronously, collaboratively together, if that's something you're interested.
We have a lot of other resources we're going to quickly go through. The main thing, and I'm going to be honest, the first couple class sessions are going to be largely me, you know, and that's how you normally do the first couple times anyway, and discussion and maybe less group work, because I need to learn my students and I need to learn my classroom space and I need to learn all of those aspects in order for things to run smoothly. And so I don't know. It may completely work for all my students to be on Zoom. Are all 60 of my students going to come face-to-face? Probably not. How many? I have no idea. I can't even guess. So once I spend the first, you know, my class meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We don't meet Monday. So maybe after we meet Wednesday, Friday, the next week, I'm like, okay, I have a better handle on this. And now I can balance what this is going to look like. But some other resources that we wanted to provide. This is actually a document. It's linked, I modified a little bit. It's linked on the first slide that Sam showed you on the resource slide that LSU created, actually from resources that we made at the Center for Teaching Excellence here at A&M. So that's fantastic. But it goes back to what I noted earlier about there's almost a way to do everything. So you just have to think about what do you want to do. And then the next resource is similar to kind of what we've talked about. It's more of our high flex courses, but again, it's that thought of how am I going to structure my course? How am I going to lay it out where it's, again, that bookend example that I showed at the beginning where it's not just me lecturing, optimizing my class time. The next resource is actually an Articulate Rise site that Nate Poling at the Center for Teaching Excellence put together that gives just kind of more tips and more resources to help you as you navigate this new time, as we're all giving ourselves grace. And so we're at the point, we're actually a couple minutes early, but we're at the point, or sorry, late, that we need to wrap up and kind of move into the question and answer session. But we wanted you to have all of our information. Again, so much of this is trial and error. So much of this is figuring out what works for you, what you're comfortable with. We are so very thankful that you joined us today and that you spent time, because we truly are focused on student success, and you are as well. That's why you're here. It shows that you care about your students, you care about the success of the semester. So if you need to reach out to any of us, if you want more ideas, if you want more examples, if you want more context within your own course, please reach out to us. We're here to help you and support you in any way that we can. So with that, unless Sam or someone has something else to share, I think we're going to shift to the question and answer portion of today. You have a little echo, but you're good.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I just echo what everyone has said. Do reach out to me if you have a question about your particular space that you're teaching in, and we'll try to get you some answers. Try to get somebody over there to help you. We're all working with other departments, and so, how-to guides are not out there. I have rough drafts. I can just push them to you guys, and so I can do that.
Thank you, Regina. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
All right. Logistically, if you have a question, if you would use your participant, raise your hand so that we know you have a question. And all right, Tamara Carter, go ahead.
Could you address how we will hear, how the remote students will hear the in-class students as far as microphone for discussion classes? And could you tell us how to put students in those Google Docs so that they can participate in those small group Google Docs that Wendy mentioned?
Yes, absolutely. So to your first question, we're going to have to kind of go back to, because the only person that's going to be mic'd is the instructor. And we can't walk up to the students and go, okay, I'm talking to this mic. And so we're just going to have to repeat. So when a student says something, ask them to speak up, ask them to be louder. If you can stand somewhat near them with your mic, awesome. But if not, we're just going to have to kind of get in the practice of repeating what people say, repeating questions, repeating comments, and is the best way I know to do it, because we're not going to have mics to pass around.
And the same is true for your students that are in Zoom. If you don't have all your students in Zoom and something comes through the Zoom chat, that's going to need to be parlayed out loud as well, so that the in-class students can know what the question in chat was as well. And so Wendy, do you want to speak about the Google Docs?
For the Google Docs, and again, we talk a lot about Google because Google offers a lot of solutions, but what I have done in my class in the past is just in the LMS, normally I have a Start Here tab that has like my syllabus and intro to me and other things. I always put a link to the Google folder that's specific for that class. And so my students know where it is. And then within that Google folder, whatever I create, I put in that folder with the date of the class. So my students know, oh, we're doing a Google form today. I tell them we're doing a Google form. They go into that link. They just find whatever is for that date. That way I'm not having to push it out to students in Zoom. I'm not having to put it up on my screen for students to type in this long link, any of those things. I just have a link to the folder in the LMS, and then they can always go to the same place.
Margaret Ezel, are you still with us?
Yes, hi there. I've got bad internet, so pardon my voice. My question is, how do you save a recorded Zoom session in Blackboard? I know how to do it to the cloud, but how do you get it to save in Blackboard?
What I have heard people do is they take their recorded class, because recorded classes only stay in Zoom for 180 days. And then they upload that into YouTube, and what they put in the LMS is the link to YouTube. But if somebody else has another solution, I'd be happy to field some of those as well. That's just the solution I've heard people use, is they have an unlisted private YouTube channel that they will then upload their class session to and share just that YouTube link. But if someone has another,
this is Sunil from nuclear engineering, and I have done in the second half after spring semester, I recorded on Zoom, stored locally, and then it was uploaded on Blackboard via media site. And you have the option to add captions on the bottom if you record it that way. And so it was fine. All the things are on Blackboard.
Yeah, I don't know. As far as I will tell you, the YouTube piece, I don't know. It depends on if you can see students, and if it's like you said, if unlisted and other things. So the things that I've done in the past is just either put it into Google Docs. So I have that Google folder with my links and I can put things in there as well, or I save it to the cloud and then.
The video files are very large and I used to load them down in Media Matrix, but Media Matrix is no longer existing. So what is the site to where you loaded down these large files? Okay.
You could also probably contact AI and they
Yeah.
could help with media site as well.
Yes.
Should I
Randy
have,
just dropped into the chat the name, it's Media Site, MEDIASITE. And yes, academic innovation can help with the management of that.
yeah, and I have 149 students. I would like to see them all at the same time, not just 10 or so like what we are doing now. How do we do that? That we can see maybe on the second screen all the 149 students.
So depending on your Zoom, you can only see up to 49 on one, what I refer to as the Brady Bunch view, the gallery view. So you can only see up to 49 at a time in the individual thumbnails. And so you have to scroll through your multiple screens of thumbnails to be able to see.
If you would contact Academic Innovation, they have open office hours and they can walk you through anything you need to know about Zoom or how Zoom works.
So thanks for sharing this information. So in one of Wendy's PowerPoint slides, it was suggested that maybe we can be being creative in cover. So is it possible to say, so I'm teaching Tuesdays and Thursdays. So is it possible to do Tuesdays just full lecture? I teach history, so it's really easy for me to do that. And then say Thursdays, it's designed for discussion. I would still be in the classroom, but then I could just easily manage the discussion much better, I think, that way. Could we do something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's up to you to decide what's best for your content and for your students. I always challenge myself to kind of think, would it be possible, and maybe less work on you, maybe more work on you. Could you record those lectures ahead of time so you don't have to do those lectures with the students in the classroom? And then if you record them ahead of time, which takes a little prep, but then you're not having to worry about the students asking questions in the middle of it and who's asking questions where. And then that in-class time could be used more for discussion. But if it makes more sense for you to do more lecture one day and more application the next day, just really thinking about maybe with that lecture, sometimes I find if I put up maybe a poll at the beginning that kind of assesses their prior knowledge, or a poll at the end, or something to make them reflect on what it was I'm talking about, then it adds just a little bit more of like, I'm glad I came to class today. You know, I'm really glad that I heard this information, and then I see the points that she thinks are most important, and there's a little more of application to it.
Sonia, that also comes with the caveat that your classroom holds, you can see all of your students socially distant for that one class period. If you can't socially distance all your students in the classroom, you would have to platoon them, and half would need to be able to come Tuesday and the other half would be able to come Thursday. So as long as your space is large enough to hold them all, it's my understanding you could do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was one of my concerns. It's a 45 student prep class, and it would be great if we could visit the classroom beforehand. Thanks.
Yes, and I know and I think Regina can echo this. I know they're working really hard to get classrooms set up and ready to be able to visit with plenty of time for you to be confident before you go on the first day. So Regina, I don't know if you want to say anything to that.
No, just give me an email. We are working hard and wrapping up our final testing and then documentation. So I would welcome an email, and then we'll find somebody to meet you in the classroom and help you out. Now, there was somebody on the chat I think, talking about Rudder. But 2 weeks ago, no, Rudder was not done. Those spaces are being worked on. If it's not one of classrooms in our area, then we will connect you to the right department. We're working with Department of Student Affairs and working with athletics, working with the folks at Reed Arena. So I will, transfer you to the right person. And so I think we're all planning to have everything ready. Not next week, but probably that Monday and Tuesday before classes start. But some of the rooms are done already. So just email me. Some of them are done already. It's just a huge list, and our list keeps growing too. So.
All right, Susan, thank you for being patient. What's your question?
So I don't use Zoom, and I usually use just the PowerPoint with lots of images because I teach the art class. And can students see the PowerPoint that I project usually on screen in the Zoom when I do, record the Zoom?
Yes, you will have to, like right now, if you just kind of move your cursor down to the bottom of your screen, there is a green button kind of in the middle that says share screen. If you click on that,
Okay.
then it allows you to share whatever you choose for them to see. That's what your entire class will see.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Donald, what's your question?
My question has to do with how one monitors Zoom questions while standing in the middle of the sort of orchestra of a large lecture hall talking to students. I mean, I couldn't possibly put myself behind that computer desk and feel good about myself so far away from everyone. So I always stand in the middle and I teach Shakespeare, I have an open text, and I talk and engage students and whatnot. So I understand I'll be behind a plexiglass screen. I've been in the room already. But the notion that if some students want to participate and ask questions and not be there, I think is a good one, but I can't see how I can do that. I could barely do it last spring when we were all on Zoom, and I would look periodically down to see if there was a chat question, but it seems impossible in the flow of a lecture to be able to monitor that as well. And I suppose someone suggested assigning it to a student, but that's kind of a burden for students to be able to monitor that and not, feel like they're monitoring me. So any suggestions?
Well, and Donald, I would say, tell the students exactly what you just told us. Tell them that, it's important that you want to answer their questions. You want to make sure that you're available to them. But when you're in the middle of lecture, it is more important that you're interacting with your students. And if you stop, then exactly what you just said to us. But then try to think of some other, and maybe it's one of those things, and as I mentioned, I've struggled with this. So maybe you save 5 minutes at the end of every class and go, okay, this is a time, if you have a question that can't wait, or at the end of an activity, or when you have a pausing point, just periodically put in intentional times for questions, and then just tell your students, and I tell my students the same thing. At the end of every session, I'll go back and look through chat, and if there's something that's relevant to everybody, I'll send it out as an announcement. If there's something that's just relevant to one student, I'll send it out. I know it's not ideal because they may have a question that's right in the middle of the moment that they need to have answered right then. But how large are your classes?
It's small. It's 35 in a room I've taught in with 140, I think. So
Okay.
It's going to be different because they're going to be, so few people in a big room, but that's what we're doing.
It will be. And you may have also, a lot of times students, if they just feel like they have somewhere to put questions. So I also have like a blank question board in my, in eCampus where students can go and put questions, and I try to monitor and help my students also monitor that discussion board as questions come up. But I think being honest with your students, so then if they do put something in chat and you don't catch it, they understand that we're human. And
yeah, well, I think coming back to it, the next class period and say, okay, someone asked a question, let's make sure I cover this and they understand it. But it's oftentimes a question that many people would like to ask that would clarify the moment for a lot of students. And to defer it for 2 days because it's a Tuesday, Thursday class, or 4 days is obviously not ideal. But as you say, it's a burden we'll all have to share, students and professors alike.
Well, and something else that I do is, looking at that bookend, hold a second, Sam, looking at that bookend approach, after, when I put my students into whatever activity they're doing, then I can use that time to read real quick. And it's not exactly in the moment, but it's at least more while class is still going. So giving myself some intentional time throughout can also be helpful. What were you going to say, Sam?
I was just going to say, we've just got a few minutes left, so I want to make sure we get as many. So Lucy, I know you've been waiting patiently with your hand raised. What was your question?
Yeah, my question is kind of in regards to time management. So because we're probably all finding that the application with the mixed technology and the face-to-face, I find that the setup and the explanation and, running the activity or whatever is taking maybe more than twice as long than it typically would. So because of that, I'm having to cut down on the content, that I'm delivering in class and moving more of that online like you guys had talked about. Not only does that take a lot of time on me, but I'm wondering if we have any feedback from students so far. At what point are students going to start resenting the fact that they have to, watch a lecture online before then like attending lecture? And so, our time is one thing, but if we're doubling the time commitment that students are having to spend on our course, has anybody gotten any feedback regarding that? Or are you just cutting down the content that you're delivering? Any words of wisdom in respect to that?
So I think it goes back to really being intentional in the content that you lecture on. And so this goes back to looking at a flipped classroom. And a lot of times we think our lecture has to be 50 minutes or it has to be 75 minutes. And what we know from research is really videos 7 to 10 minutes, if we can compact them before class and then have the students be held accountable to, hey, watch this 7 to 10 minute video or watch this 15-minute video. And it doesn't have to be you. I know some instructors who teach completely flipped classes and none of the videos are them. They've just curated a nice list of videos that they didn't record. And sometimes there's 2 different ones because they're both short or they offer different opinions. And then when they come to class, then it's the application type exercise. And I would encourage you to explain to the students why you're choosing to teach this way, and that you find it more valuable for your class time to be spent with you doing application type activities and offloading the just watching of content or the reading of content like Wendy was talking about, with the caveat of what you truly want students to get from your course. And I know we as instructors think if I don't say it, they're not going to learn it. And so really being intentional in the content that we want them to learn, we want them to master in our course. Can I offload some of that, explaining to the students that it's really the application of that in class that really drives home that learning, and you want to be there with them so that when they have questions or problems arise, you're there. And so helping them understand, like Wendy said, why you're choosing to teach the class and being intentional in explaining that to them, that you're not preparing them to be better students, you're preparing them to be professionals in the field. And as part of that, the application of the content is what's really going to drive home that learning. And so that's why you're choosing to spend your class time with them and offloading some of that content asynchronously. But like you said, be mindful of how much front load work they have to do and keeping that within perspective.
So my question is about the technology in the classroom. All of this can be very overwhelming. And I just wondered, and I thought maybe your session today was going to be more focused on that. And if you might be possible, because there's so many of us that will be using this technology,
So there's going to be, I guess, cameras installed in the classroom. So are those cameras going to capture both the screen, the teacher, as well as the students in the classroom? Is that how it's going to work? Or are we only going to project using Zoom? So like sharing our screen or using the camera on our computer. Can you address that? And could it be possible to maybe do a demonstration of how that's going to work in a classroom? Because it might make things or facilitate, you know, us learning it in our individual classrooms. Because I think that is going to be the factor that, you know, we're going to be struggling with. And I like to have all my ducks in a row on the first day and know where everything is and what buttons to push and what, you know, switches to flip so that it's all working. And I'm the one that's in Rudder Tower in some theater room that's dark and doesn't even have any desktops. So I would like to go to that classroom and see it and hopefully, you know, with a week before classes start, because the day before is not enough time.
So first of all, Dr. Weinmiller, send me an email. And second of all, we've done extensive testing with faculty. As far as a how-to video on how everything works, I'm gonna say probably no on that due to the time. But Jason Munchow is awesome. He's amazing. We are working on Rudder. It will be done depending on what room you're talking about. It may be done already. So send me an email and I will connect you with him.
What is your email? Did you post that or?
Yeah, it's on the PowerPoint slide. It's on the PowerPoint
and those
slide.
are going to be emailed, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Send me an email and I will connect you with him. Okay. He is awesome. He is amazing. It is going to work. Now we are getting together a group of faculty to do some testing. You know, those of you like yourself, you want to look at the room first. So it's very timely. And he may be actually doing tours for his classrooms in Rudder.
So do you know, is it like it's set up, you know, during non-COVID semesters where you have a liaison for each of a set of buildings, like Harrington oversees like Heldenfels and
right.
You have so many more learning spaces than what you've had in the past. Right. So is there going to be like an office or a point person for those learning spaces?
I want to say a yes to that. Some of those learning spaces are within some of my centers, so we'll be doing those. I want to say the ones coming under Jason, he's going to have somebody to help you. So I kind of want to say yes to that. We're not just going to throw you out there to the wolves. But once again, if you email me all your questions, I will get them addressed.
Okay, sounds good. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
You know what room in Rudder? Because there's several rooms in Rudder.
Exactly. I was up there and I went in it. I had to have somebody let me in. It's A110, which I think is also known as the Rudder Forum.
Okay. Yeah, just FYI on the Rudder rooms, the learning spaces, they're not classrooms. So once you guys are done, you know, they're gonna go back to where they were before because that's how they make their funding. And so it won't be permanent like the traditional classrooms are.
Yes, I understand that. I know everybody's working with limited capabilities.
Yes, ma'am. But we will help you out. I'm glad that you want to go in and test early. But yeah, we'll take care of you.
So we can use our own laptops, correct? I mean, and then hook them up.
The Wi-Fi should be available. Now we're providing Jason with our computers and with laptops. So I want to say yes to that. But please send me an email and I'll just shoot it straight to him and we'll get those questions answered for you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You have a good day.
All right, you too.
All right, Sinjini, what is your question?
Hi, Sam, and thanks. So I had one like kind of policy question and one clarification. So the policy question, and this is based off, you know, some of the chatter I saw on chat today. And so when we are offering these classes, whether they are face-to-face or online, we are recording them. We are offering students the option not to be in classroom and attend remotely. And then in addition to projecting the lecture on Zoom, we are also recording it and posting it later, right? So this gives students the option to attend the class asynchronously, as we call it, right? So I understand that. So is it true that we have to give the students the opportunity to attend asynchronously? Because the question pertains to, how do you get student participation? Are we allowed to do in-class quizzes? Say I put a quiz on LMS or Google Forms or whatever that I require them to take in class. But if, we are allowing students to do this asynchronously, or just having that possibility because they might have, bad internet connection or whatever, then is this feasible that we can do things like in-class quizzes?
First of all, you don't have to provide your students with an opportunity to do the class asynchronously. These are not high flex courses. So you don't even have to record your course. That's up to you if you want to record courses and you want to put them online. So with that being said, in my class, attendance is mandatory. So even if you have bad internet, that doesn't mean, I'm going to ask them to turn on their cameras. If for some reason something goes wrong, you need to send me an email and explain to me why you can't. But figure out, go drive to the McDonald's parking lot, go something, because an asynchronous option is not an option in my course. You have to attend either face-to-face or via Zoom, and you have to participate that way. So that's up to you. So the other part of that question then, if you do give them an asynchronous option, that's still, you can still mandate that they do everything that the in-class students are doing or the Zoom students are doing. You would just have to give an asynchronous option for that as well, because it's a graded piece. So all students have to have equal access to anything that is graded, but you do not have to offer an asynchronous aspect.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I wasn't sure if it had to be that way. And so this brings me back to the Zoom recordings, because there was a question on that earlier. So if you record to the cloud, you can just post that link on your LMS, right? So I was wondering what that discussion was about. You don't actually have to put it into YouTube or anything else. You can just post the link, right? So what was the issue with that?
I think some people are just wanting to do more, or wanting a different avenue, or wanting to make it closed captioned or other things. So I think that's where that conversation came up.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, Gabriel, thank you for being patient. What's your question?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right, so really following up on the last question and the last point that Wendy just made about asynchronous recordings, but also flipped classrooms where you have pre-recorded lectures, do we have to caption them? And if so, how do we do that?
You do not have to.
It is my understanding that is if you have a student that has an accommodation for captioning, then yes, they need to be captioned. Otherwise, providing the transcript along with the video is enough, is my understanding.
And when you're saying providing the transcript, so that's the Zoom built-in captioning mechanism is adequate?
That is my understanding.
So you mentioned that you're going to share the recording and the slide deck with us after the presentation. Can we share that with other faculty in our departments?
If you charge them $5 and split it with us. No, I'm completely kidding. Yes, please. We welcome you to share this with whomever. There may be a day that you're the only one in that face-to-face classroom. If they all choose to be remote that day, then it's you in there by yourself. And so kick off your shoes.
You do it differently.
There you go. And so just depending how the semester ebbs and flows with different things. Now, like Wendy said, and to Sinjini's point, building in some participation points or some attendance points is certainly your prerogative. You'll just want to spell that out in your syllabus and what engagement looks like and what the expectation is for those participation points, and have a conversation with and often with the students so they know what you're expecting and how to meet those expectations within that blended synchronous format.
I did want to follow up with your question about sharing. We will send you the link, but the link will be to CTE's Center for Teaching Excellence's YouTube channel. And so that is an open YouTube channel for anyone to subscribe to, anyone to be a part of. And so even for your own benefit, if you subscribe, and you'll get, you'll know when new videos are posted with other professional development opportunities. So please share, please share.
Someone shared in the chat link the room capacity document link. And so when you go to that room capacity document link, what is posted there are the room capacity at social distance, with social distance. So if you teach 100 students and the room capacity says 100, then you should be able to socially distance, put all 100 students in there. If you have 100, or if you have 200, but the capacity is only 100, then it is my understanding that yes, you would need to platoon your students.
Well, we thank you all so very much for joining us today. This has been fantastic. Your questions, your input has been wonderful. And so we thank you. We're excited about this semester. We're excited for the opportunities for our students and what this change in education is going to look like. Education needs a little shaking up anyway. So maybe this is our chance to shake it up. I went ahead and put our contact information back up here. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. And as I mentioned before, the Center for Teaching Excellence consultants would love to do one-on-one consultations with you with any additional questions that you have. So with that.
And if we don't know the answer, we'll sure help to track it down, because that just provides us with a solid foundation as well. I want to thank Wendy for giving us her time to be here to share classroom ideas with us. I want to thank Regina for being here and helping field the technology and share as much as she could about that, and the rest of the CTE consultant team. It certainly was a group effort. So I wish you all the very best, and I know we all at the center are here to support you in any way we can. So like Wendy said, don't hesitate to reach out. And the resources will be shared certainly by the end of the week. So we'll make sure that gets taken care of for you.
Thank you all. Enjoy your